Welcome back to another Bob's Minecraft tutorial. Today we're going to solve some of the problems with our cart delivery system from last time and end up with an automated, easy to use minecart station. We'll be adding some indicator lights, runaway cart detection, and pausing carts. Before we start though, we're going to review some minecart and redstone techniques and learn a few simple tricks we'll need later. First, we'll look at how intersecting carts behave. In the booster tutorial, you saw that when a track reaches a corner it's not connected to, a cart will simply continue moving forward. When a cart reaches a perpendicular intersection, it will always turn west or south on the new track. Let's call this the southwest rule. While there's no compass in the game, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and the clouds will always drift north. I usually put some sort of marker on the north-facing walls of my cave so I can tell direction when working underground. Here's a simple non-resetting booster from the first tutorial. The main cart drops in next to the booster and they both accelerate to the cart's max speed. This booster has the main cart coming up to the booster cart and it works just as well. I also made a flat reset section for the booster by applying the southwest rule. You can compact the space a booster needs to reset by applying a different track laying technique. In order to make the reset track curve towards the ramp, I'm going to take advantage of the way tracks always prefer to form curves. When I place a block over my ramp and lay track on top of it, the track below automatically curves to it. Now I can destroy that block for a compact booster. Here's a flat compact booster. To make one of these, I simply lay a circular track at the end of the booster section, lay out the rest of my booster, and replace that closest corner track piece. Unfortunately, building a booster reset like this only works if the booster cart is coming again from the south or the west. It will not work if your booster is heading east or north. Now let's learn a bit more about redstone. Redstone ore, when laid on the ground, acts as a wire between a power source such as a lever, pressure plate, button, or redstone torch, and an object such as a door or T-shaped track intersection. A redstone torch will act as a power source that turns off when it receives power itself. When a redstone torch is placed on top of a block, it will output power to the blocks adjacent to it and will accept input from the blocks below it. If any redstone attached to those blocks below is carrying power, the torch will shut off and stop outputting power. A redstone torch on top of a block will also provide power to the block above it. This can be pretty useful when you're trying to hide your wiring underground. When placed on the side of a block, it will output power to the blocks you see here, and will accept input from the sides, the rear, and the top. If any or all of those inputs are receiving power, the torch will shut off. When wiring an object, make sure your redstone wire actually points towards the object you're trying to power. If it doesn't, the power won't travel. Power in redstone wire will only travel 15 blocks from its nearest power source. In the last tutorial, we built a power inverter that stops sending power when it receives power, creating an opposite effect. If we put two of these together, they form a repeater that allows us to extend our signal. Simply put a setup of these every 15 blocks and you can run your redstone as long as you like. This is a simplified repeater you should be able to figure out using what you've already learned. Finally, before we get to the good stuff, here's the old cart holding area from the cart delivery tutorial. It has a problem that makes it pretty unreliable. Although the cart reaches max speed almost immediately, it'll continue to build more and more of the momentum that allows it to travel farther until finally the game just gives up and stops the cart completely. This new holding area should be a lot more reliable by having both carts stop once per loop. When we're ready for the cart to leave the holding area, we'll step on a plate that we wire to the curved track section marked exit. Here I've wired the track section to a pressure plate using a redstone torch beneath it and an inverter in the middle of my circuit. Adding a blinking indicator light to our holding area is pretty simple. Just place a wooden pressure plate instead of a track piece at the end of either track section in the holding area. Wire that pressure plate to a wall-mounted redstone torch and it will blink when the holding area has a cart ready and turn off when it doesn't. If it stays on when the cart leaves the holding area, just place an inverter between the pressure plate and redstone torch. Notice that I also added one more track section to the ramp at the end of the booster to make up for the fact that the booster cart's having to push off that main cart from the wooden plate. Be careful when you're wiring your pressure plate to your redstone torch. If you pass directly under a track section, the power the track receives can sometimes have unexpected results like you see here. We had to use a wooden pressure plate for our lighting because of the difference between wooden and stone pressure plates. A wooden pressure plate will activate with a minecart on it whether it has a rider or not. A stone pressure plate will only activate if the cart has a rider. This means we can use those stone pressure plates to change direction based on whether or not a cart has someone inside. Here I've wired a stone pressure plate to a T intersection 4 tracks to the right. By default, the track loops back to the holding area, so if we miss the cart after requesting it by standing on a different pressure plate, it will automatically go back and be ready again in a couple of seconds. When the cart has a rider, like yourself the player or my soon-to-be dinner here, the cart pressure plate is activated and the T intersection changes direction, sending the cart wherever you'd like to go. Ignore the graphical glitch here that makes the curve point in the wrong direction. This is the only time I've seen that happen. You can use this runaway cart prevention at your station in case you miss picking up the cart, and you can also place it along your railway for when you jump out and lose your cart. The last new technique I'll show you today is how to pause a cart temporarily then start it back up again. You can use one of these at each of your minecart stations so you have time to get off, and you can also use it when requesting a cart for my last tutorial so that it pauses while you get on. I know this looks pretty complicated, but it's really easy when you break it down to the smaller pieces that you already know. First, we have a cart holding area ready to send a cart to boost along our main cart. Next, we have a block with no track to act as a brake. The cart will slide over this block and then onto our wooden pressure plate. The wooden pressure plate is wired to the holding area's T intersection so that when a cart arrives, a second cart is sent out to boost it down the track. I ran the wire above ground so you can see it, but I could have just as easily placed it underground. Also note that I needed to use a repeater in the middle because of the distance of the redstone wire. Finally, when the booster is finished sending along the cart, it returns to the holding area. Your main cart's going to be paused for as long as it takes your booster cart to reach your main cart. You can change this by either changing the amount of track, or if you happen to be a redstone expert, you could also chain inverters together, as inverters have a slight delay to them. Thanks for watching the tutorial. There's a few more useful tricks to learn with minecarts, but for the next tutorial you're going to get an introduction to redstone logic gates, and we'll see how to make a combination lock vault. It's really not as hard as it sounds. If you'd like to test out my subway for yourself, you can find the link to download the file with instructions in the description.